Law. More area, break 25% increased armor, more area. It's a lot of area. This is warrior start, big ol' armor nodes, attack speed with some dex randomly. That's kind of neat. Gonna be a new PoE 2. 100% there will be a. So these nodes, this is attack speed. This is just global damage with one-handed weapons. So it's all damage types. That's good. More armor nodes. That's a big amount of percent armor. I think armor evasion and ES are going to be very dogshit stats unless you actually invest into them, which makes sense. Like the removal of life nodes means you have more points to spend into things that were typically seen as less valuable defense in PoE 1, like armor and evasion. So base values on gear kind of mediocre. The amount of percent increase you can get in the tree much higher. But you're gonna have to invest, which is fine and good. Ooh, look at that. You see that shit? One-handed nodes, 10% on the travel, two-handed nodes, 12%. Why are you using a one-hander, you fucking dumbass? Use a two-hander. Be brave. Always two-hander. Let's go. Two-hander. Two-handers. Yeah, there's 12% damage with two-hander. Increase stun threshold into... What a tease. Increase the amount of armor broken. Increase damage if they're fully broken. So some skills like Sunder, when their armor is fully broken, it like consumes the armor break debuff to do a guaranteed crit with a bunch of extra crit damage. But if you're not using a skill like Sunder that intentionally removes the break armor debuff, I assume you can just maintain it fully broken armor. But in PoE 1, your stun threshold, numerically the raw value is your life total. So if you have 5k life, your threshold is 5k. And then you have percent increase modifiers to increase that if you want, like on, well, it used to be on the armor mastery. I think it's gone now. It's on like Warrior's Blood and in Marauder. I think it's in the armor evasion mastery too. But there's a lot more sources of plus stun threshold and percent increased stun threshold in this game. It's like fake life. Yeah, it's like life that only works for stun calculations. Okay. So this wheel just makes it way easier to maintain armor break. So yeah, also the generic axe node there was damage with axes, not physical damage with axes, which is good. Yeah, this is the max res thing we've seen. Bunch of max fire res, like, assuming things are kind of similar to PoE 1, that's 6 max fire res. If you're like properly over res capped for like curses and stuff. Warcry speed, that's a big number. Like, my guess, this is also just generic damage with weapon type. No physical distinction, that's good. But like, my guess is you're probably gonna want some life regen. Something like, 7 to 10% per second. Combination with sources of leech is my guess. There are some hybrid armor evasion things. So interestingly, the small travel node we saw earlier was 15% armor. This one is 12% armor and evasion. Life as armor. It's gonna be what, like, you have 4k life on like a Titan. That's gonna be 600 base armor, which then will get scaled by all of your armor increases. Attack damage against bleeding enemies. It's important to remember that the way bleeding is calculated is different now, and attack damage does work on bleeding now. Because the bleeding is just based off the pre-mitigation size of the hit, and is not scaled by like secondary effects afterwards. Are there still pure dot builds? I doubt it. Increased stun build makes it easier for you to apply stun to your targets. Damage is lucky against heavy stunned enemies. Like, lucky damage for like a normal physical two-handed build that had this kind of spreads you had in PoE 1, I think it was like 18% more damage, 20% more damage kind of thing. But if you're like a full lightning build, then it's like, 35, 40. It's a good chunk of stun threshold, assuming you have like, I'm gonna assume you have at least 300 strength on like a pretty solid endgame dual build two-hander build, just because you have to have double the mace requirement, which I think is going to be like 150-ish. So that's pretty good amount of flat stun threshold. I really, really hope the stun formula is different in PoE 2. To be like a little bit less punishing at low chance, at like low damage values. Melee damage in full life, attack speed if you haven't attacked recently. That's dog shit. Yo, what's up, Rob? Oh, melee critical hit chance, 20%, and it's a notable? That is such a low number. So many ways to invest in your characters like defense and recovery and stuff. Wish you hovered over that region notable on the left. I'm curious. Why the fuck are there minion damage nodes, first off, on the skill tree at all? Second off, on the melee south part of the skill tree? Excuse me? God, minions need to... Like, in my skill tree, 5%. That's a lot. Is that the same wording as PoE unblock? Is it increased chance? Or is it plus number to chance? It's plus 3% chance. This is increased chance. So yeah, it's gonna take your shield's base block value and increase it as like a multiplier. It's not adding to it. In which case 5% is very low. It's like if a shield has like 25 chance to block, it's like 2.5%. We'll see. I PoE to ascendancy tier list. My shameless content will start whenever Seal wants it to start. I don't do YouTube stuff. That's all him. If he wants to be shameless, he can do that. 1.5 region, 40% recovery rate. I don't really care that much about flask life recovery rate. It's not also paired with either duration or increased amount recovered. So this is like the same amount of life recovered, just faster. It's okay, but it's not the preferred stat. Usually the preferred stat is increased life recovered from life flasks. 5% reduced attack speed, 40% increased dam. I haven't seen as much increased attack speed on this tree as there were on prior trees, although could just be the nodes we've seen. And in general attack speed, you know, if you can get damage from attack speed or from damage, the same DPS per point, you'd always go attack speed. Because it also increases your mobility, at least in PoE 1. Leap Slam exists in PoE 2, it has no cooldown. But it does have a pretty big base attack time added to it as a flat value. Make it slower. But I do still think in the endgame, if you heavily invest into attack speed, I think you'll be able to go decently fast. And stun build-up's kind of good too. 20 accuracy. I wonder how much accuracy you're going to need. So the way accuracy works, I mean, you're probably just going to go RT if you're not playing like Sunder or something that has crit scaling. But if you're not RT, the way accuracy works is you need more accuracy the further you are from the target. So I'm not really sure how much we're going to need as melee. Crossblink will not exist in PoE 2. So far, there's not a single good movement skill in PoE 2. Attack speed and attack crit hit chance. Bro, these attack crit numbers are so low. Like the earlier notable we saw was 20%, this is 15. That's like such a small number. Base crits are higher. I saw like 6% on a weapon. Like lightning spells have a super high crit chance, but like the maces that I saw was not big. While leeching modifiers are not very strong in this game, Leech's base duration is 1 second instead of 5. Overleech exists, but like 1 second makes that like like it's okay, it's fine. Interesting. Just because like there could be scenarios where you have a one-hander in one and a two-hander in the other, and you're like dual-wielding fast one-handers to armor break, and then you're slamming with a two-hander. So it's like one-hander and two-hander. Kind of node that would like never exist in PoE 1. The travel node is wall chaining. That's kind of wild. Wall chaining is super strong with certain skills, and like irrelevant with different skills. Bro, there's fucking minion nodes on Duelist side. They've got all kinds of nodes everywhere because of how much more unique like characters can be and how less needed life nodes are. There's like all kinds of shit on like every part of the tree, it looks like. I wouldn't be surprised if you do want these kind of nodes, especially with those travel nodes being so good at 4%. just because you have to kill every single rare in every single zone now. God, the crit values are so low. But those crit nodes are like 8% travel. Base crit's only higher on like daggers. On a lot of the other things, it was like super low still. It really makes me not want to even think about crit on 2 animaces. Like RT for sure. Unless you're going Sunder. Base multi is 100% now. Yeah, instead of 50%, it's 100%. But like Sunder, you don't need to spec into crit chance because the whole point is you armor break and then Sunder and get a guaranteed crit. Ooh, this is the good stat from Last Recovery. That's the good stat. Let's see what the notables are. Just sustain. So you only have 1 life loss now, and it consumes, last we saw, 10 charges by default, which means, what is that, 25 seconds to give you an extra charge? On long boss fights, not terrible. And that travel node was an extra every 0.1. I assume the bottom travel node's the same thing. So that whole bottom part of the wheel would give you like, every like, what, 18, 16 seconds or so? 15 seconds? A flash charge, that's pretty good. If like your build sucks and you're getting dumpster by the bosses and they take forever and you have no recovery outside of flasks, very good. Ideally, you don't need those points because you can roll that same mod, like gain charges per second, on the flask itself. And ideally, that's enough. We'll see. Do not wear a shield. Wear 2 two-handers. Some wed nodes and a big old pen node. One difference with pen can no longer go negative in PoE2, from what I've been told. That's why all the pen values are higher. Because they're, they bottom out at 0. During a flask effect, substantially worse than it used to be. Because charms probably just aren't flasks at all. And you just have the 1 life, 1 mana pot, not utility flasks. You're using a lot of crossbow shots that have to reload after every single shot. Because they're fucking rockets, not crossbow bolts. Probably good. If you're using things where you're shooting like 14 shots and then reloading, less good. Either way, if you're using a crossbow, you're going to use that, I'm pretty sure. Dude, Pierce is way harder to come by in this game. Like, that is a chance for 1 Pierce with a conditional as a notable. Is so much harder to get Pierce. You think it just rolls Pierce and then it rolls and then it pierces every single thing? 80% recovery. So instead of making it less likely to get stunned, you make it so your stun duration is slower. 80% is a big number. If those travel nodes are like 20% each, this would lower stun duration, assuming it's the same baseline. What is the baseline again? Is it like 350, I think, in PoE1? It would lower that down to like a 1/7 of a second stun duration, which is pretty fast. We've been robbed. More flat life on block. This in combination with the travel nodes on the other side already puts you at like 20 or so flat life on block. I don't know how easily, I mean, Glancing Blows still exists, and flat life on blocks on the tree, that could be a pretty solid method of defense if, I just don't know if, like most of the damage events we've seen people take are just so much bigger. Like less monsters, less shit on your screen, less proj, higher damage numbers. It's been like a pretty common trend. So armor with some extra stun threshold. 50% of base armor also added the stun threshold. I think that's going to be a lot of stun threshold. And you're going to like that if you're an armor stacker. It'll help you actually feel like you're tanky. And not getting stunned by pebbles. So against crits, your armor value is just doubled. A decent method of mitigation against physical and fire damage from crits. But also crits, I assume for monsters as well, are also baseline double damage now, instead of 30% more damage now. So you're really going to want some crit mitigation. Stun threshold, 3% life! What? What? So, like, a little bit of life in combination. The prior node was no travel life, right? It was just stun threshold. Yeah, so 3 points for 3% life, and then some stun threshold. If you also want stun mitigation, definitely worth taking in hardcore. But if you don't care about stun mitigation, then it's questionable value. Making it easier for you to stun. A big ol' armor break whenever you proc heavy stun. That seems really good. If you heavy stun a lot, because you can get increased armor broken and just make it so this proc is 100%. The downside of blood magic is way less than it used to be, because you no longer give up reservation. So if you actually have strong recovery from regen and leech, no problem at all taking this. I haven't seen mana leech anywhere in the game except for on a support gem so far. We'll see. But like, because you have a forced life flask, you're already gonna have a pretty good amount of mana related sustain. And if you ever need more than like more than that mana pot, like hopefully it's not too hard to come by, but if you're melee, this is always an option. So if somebody have good leech stuff. Fucking minion nodes again, man. 5% reduce movement speed, 2% regional stationary. If you take this node, I will ban you. Excess recovery from regen is applied to ES. This is so much better than the Zeo and PoE. Because it doesn't kill your life regen. It only makes it so once you are full HP, your life regen then applies to ES instead. I do wonder how it's going to work though in regards to what stat it cares about for calculating percent life regen. Like if I have 500 life per second from life regen, but I only have 22 ES. Once my life fills up, am I going to recover that ES at a rate of 500 per second? Or is it going to take my percentage life recovery and then apply it to my 22 ES and give me like 1 ES per second? Like it used to be the former for ES Overleach Belt, Soul Tether. But then they nerfed it and made it the latter in 3.14. But the wording of this makes me think it's going to be the former, as a flat value instead of as a percent. I'm sorry, but it's like I still just keep thinking about it. Like why do minions exist? Fuck. So the combination of old glancing blows being back and life on block being kind of accessible and a lot of flat values on gear and the guaranteed block shield holding up thing seems like it has some potential. But like I think I would only consider it if I was playing like the Titan's grip thing and then doing two-handed plus shield. But with these dual skills looking so good for offense with dual wielding big two-handers, like fuck wearing a shield, man. That's cowardly. Like the best I've seen so far is this little like magma stun block thing where you block, you active block, and if you block within 0.5 seconds, you'll get an endurance charge and like trigger some lava bullshit. So you could, you know, and it has a 3/4 second cooldown. So you could, if you're getting hit a ton, you could active block, cancel, active block, cancel, active block, cancel, and get like 3 endurance charges in like 3 seconds or so. And then you rip like a seismic cry, which would consume all 3 endurance charges at once, I think, to exert the next 4 attacks. That's not as good because it's not exerting, it's not using 1 endurance charge per attack, staggered, it's like all at once. But that would give you a way to rapid fire consume all endurance charges. So if you just passively just had like 5 sitting there always, instead of using your Warcry as a damage thing, you could use it as an oh shit button that just is like a snap healing you for like half your HP. Which could be kind of neat if recovery's hard. But I would want a better source of endurance charge generation if I was going to use them that way. I wouldn't want to have to active block and all that shit for that. The old Juggernaut node, you're definitely going to want this node. It's also on the same strength node as the Mace nodes, so if you're playing a Mace build, you will be coming down here and getting this for sure. This is the Dex part of the tree. Where is Ranger? Ranger's right above this, right? Right above this, I think. And Duelist is to the left here. Do we know what Equilibrium does in this version of the game? Curious. A 5% Fizz conversion, kind of good. You're going to want this on pretty much every single build that is doing any sort of LE damage with attacks, for sure. Increased effective poisoning to enemies that are not poisoned. So increased effective poison is like a more multiplier on poison. I'm not sure how much effect you'd already have though. Like I assume there's someone like travel nodes and whatnot. And poison I think has like 5 stacks nowadays. I don't actually know what the number is. I don't think it's 1. I don't really know how poison even really works nowadays. I know it has a cap. That's it. Alright, I can believe that it might be 1 stack by default because of seeing this node. Before seeing this node, there was never a reason to think that based on the wording on the keystones on Pathfinder. Because it used words like double instead of an additional time, which is what you'd expect if it was going from 1 to 2. I wonder if these travel nodes have increased effect of poison. I'm pretty sure they're going to. And that 20 reduced is like nowhere near as impactful as you'd expect if you already have some other sources of increased effect. One thing I do wonder, there's no way it works this way, it'd be super OP. Does this make it so dodge roll can evade all hits? That would be so broken, it won't do that. But it'd be funny if they fucked it up and didn't realize. So the way that monster damage works in this game for hits, there's no longer a distinction between attacks and spells or none of the above. The way it works is there's 2 hit types, avoidable and not avoidable. And by default, smaller hits are avoidable. They can be blocked, they can be evaded, and they are fully immune. You are fully immune to them while you're in the starting part of a dodge roll. It's an iframe against these avoidable hits, like small stuff. Bigger hits and area events, like rocks falling from the sky, bosses winding up slams, shit like that, are not avoidable. None of those things work on them. If you have this node, evasion chance will work on them. I'm going to assume dodge roll iframe and block still will not work on them, just raw base chance to evade. But it comes with a big penalty of halving your evasion chance. But if you have a ton of evasion, I kind of like it. Take less dot damage if you started taking dot damage in the past second, take more if you haven't. So basically it's Leafy Shade, except instead of 50% less and then normal, it's 75% less and then fuck you. So for things like ground effects, like Maven Puddles, Cyrus Puddles, Exarch Puddles, Uber Elder Puddles, Cortex Puddles, there's a lot of puddles on Uber bosses, huh? For all of those kind of things that are just purely ground effects, this is honestly probably better than it is in PoE 1, because you shouldn't be in them for longer than a second. But for things like ailments, ignite, long duration burns, bleeds, poisons, it's worse. But just get rid of those things, Yeah, the notable on the tree that makes so you dodge the first second of a ground effect, levitation, that shit's not gonna exist. They're gonna remove that. That's OP. This is a really good notable if you're just any dex build at all. You're gonna have at least 150 dex just from taking dex nodes to use your gems and shit. Yeah. 100% poison duration, basically, if you're blasting and applying tons of poisons. Just makes it easier to have the longest poisons lasting longer. But because poisons have a hard cap now on the number you can apply, it's not as good as it would have been in the PoE 1 version of poisons. This is another +1 poison. So far what we've seen for poison is +1 poison, 100% reduced effect, which is a multiplier on the damage value of the poison. 25% reduced duration and additional poison. And then the Pathfinder thing is double poison amount, 35% less duration, not reduced. So it won't stack additively at least. This reduced duration will be instantly offset by this increase, and you won't care about it at all, I think. And that puts you at 6 poisons so far just from the tree in Pathfinder. I wonder, like, what the poison numbers are. I don't know how many stacks Wither has now. So far, both sources of Wither application that I've seen were super weak. So I think I'm kind of expecting the stacks to not go to 15. I think it'll be less. Or maybe it's only 1. Yeah, it's possible it's only 1, but if it's only 1, this is really good. It just like applies with everything. One thing that's still unclear is just like, how do you poison? Because for a lot of things, it seems like your chance to apply the ailment is either static and default, and then increased by like a weird increased chance, not a plus number chance. Like with the new way that poison works, it works the way you think about damage application for poison is the way you thought about damage application for tornado in PoE1, because you can only hit it 20 times total. If you had a skill that hit like 1,000 times, then it wasn't very good because you like so many of the hits didn't contribute toward the tornado. And now in PoE2, poison's the same way. Like if you have 100 chance to poison, your poison lasts 4 seconds, and you can apply 10 poisons, then you want to be able to attack. What is that? I already forgot what I said. Let's say 5-second duration and like 5 poisons for simplicity. Then to maintain full uptime, you gotta attack once per second. And when it comes to poisons, like sustained poison DPS over a long period of time, attacking more than once per second does not increase your poison damage. But more attacks per second at the start of your ramp lets you reach your 5 poison stacks faster. So like anywhere from like 5 to 10 hits per second in that scenario would be good. But like 50, you're just like, you're not getting poison value anymore at that point in general. Blah.